Hi,
Q.
Robyn.
Hi, Dr. Hill. How are you?
Hanging. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm hanging too, ready for some good food. Um, I just want to give a brief introduction. Dr. Hill holds a BA in English from Jackson State University and MA in Political Science from the University of Central Oklahoma, an MA in English Literature from Grambling State University, and a PhD in Humanities with an English Literature core from the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. Her research involves the autobiography of Malcolm X, popular culture, and the African American biography. Dr. Hill is currently a visiting assistant professor at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University, where she teaches English and humanities courses. Please welcome the final contributor to the People, Dr. Tamara Hill.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Your literary work, I'm just going to go ahead and give it to everyone. It's The Souls of Protest and Resistance from James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and Kendrick Lamar, better known as the Godfather of Soul, Prince of Motown, and The Chosen One. I am definitely a fan of all three, and they have impacted me as I am a lover of all music, Dr. Hill. The fact that you have a PhD in humanities with an English literature core, it wasn't a shock that you chose the structure you did for this thoughtful piece. Dr. Hill, you covered James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and Kendrick Lamar's journeys like a true journalist. You really did. And with a highly informative tone. What inspired the process of your research over the eras you chose, and why these artists and no one else?
I think because I grew up in a household where my parents played Marvin Gaye and they played James Brown, and I love Kendrick Lamar. So James was played in my household, but I didn't know who he was until he was in Rocky.
Yes.
Being in America, that's as close as I could get. And then Marvin Gaye, I heard my dad play that "What's Going On," and I didn't understand, but I liked the melody, right? And so then when he did "Sexual Healing," I was like, "You can't sing that. You can't sing that." But I was like, okay, but I listened to it anyway. So then I get married, have my daughter, and I remember when she was 3, and Kendrick was on the radio, and he said, "Please don't kill my vibe." I'm doing a clean version. And she says, "Mommy and Daddy, please don't kill my vibe." She was 3. I was like, "Are you serious? You don't have a vibe at 3." But now she's 15, or no, she'll be 15 this summer. And last year, we got a chance to see Kendrick, and he is truly phenomenal. But I look at those artists or people, let me just not say musical artists, the people who are willing to give up their celebrity, to sacrifice their celebrity, to speak up for what's right. And that's what inspired me. I look at LeBron, I look at the young black males who are at Howard University because of Trayvon Martin, who got shot and killed in a hoodie. They were willing to step up and protest, regardless of what was happening. And again, I grew up with Muhammad Ali saying, "I'm so pretty." He would tell Howard Cosell, he said, "You ugly, I'm so pretty." But he was willing to give up whatever he had obtained in order to speak out for what's right. He said he had nothing to deal with or do with the Viet Cong because they did nothing to him as an individual. Why would he go over and fight? And so that's why I was so inspired to say these particular 3 artists. And because Kendrick had the name from the Temptations, which is our theme song at Jackson State University, getting ready because here we come, that really kicked it off for me. That's how I could see the correlation.
Well, reading these stories, Dr. Hill, I was also feeling nostalgic as I was reading it. And Marvin Gaye is a huge person in my discography, along with Kendrick Lamar, especially his works over, even Judas and the Black Messiah,
Exactly.
James Brown, he's pivotal, but he's also iconic for those who are in popular culture like Michael Jackson, and they all speak to some level of humanity. So I appreciate your contributions there. Throughout the literary work, there are some in touch places that I can recognize that you took a long time to think about where you're going to be pulling your citations or your research, so to speak, from. How did you choose that, and for the purpose of building a better dynamic for the story?
I think as an academic and just as a writer, I've always been taught to balance everything out, right? It's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You gotta have support, right?
You gotta have support, right? And so as much as I love them as people and or as celebrities, they were people and they were flawed, right? And so if I don't present all those sides, then my work is not, it's not objective. It's not where you can read and say, okay, she caught this, but yet he did this. Because let's be clear, James Brown was very adamant about, if he didn't get paid, he was not going to perform I'm Black and I'm Proud. And they gave in, the councilman gave in to him. And so then you have to wonder, like, was he really about the people? It was about his money. I didn't know this as a kid growing up. Again, when I saw James Brown, he was on a run from the police and he was in Rocky. That's all I can remember. And his wife was coming to jail to roll his hair. That's what I remember. God forgive me. But doing the research, it gave me a different insight about him, right? And so they're right, and I tell that to my students, whether people like it or not, you have to present all sides because it can't be totally biased. And if you're presenting a story about, especially an iconic figure like James Brown, you have to be real about it. You have to be real about Marvin Gaye and the depression he went through. And maybe some of his depression even fueled his music initiatives that he wanted to take on. Like I talk about how him and Barry got into it. Again, I didn't know that him and Barry had a fight about him doing What's Going On. Because Barry said, look, you're a crooner. You sing love songs. This is what we want. And Barry goes, nah, I'm gonna sing this. And the song was really supposed to go to someone else, and he took it and twerked it, and he said, you know what, I'm not doing nothing else until you get this off the shelf. That is a backstory, and people need to know that, because I would have never known that. And when it came out, it was so beautiful and profound, right? And so those are the things that people need to know. It's not just the music, but what inspires that music. It's popular culture. It's part of my culture. And we have to know, in the music industry, everything is not perfect. I just read a story the other day about Method Man and Mary J. Blige, the song for You're All I Need, and how the lady who really came up with the thought or the concept got no credit. So to me, it's always that backstory that provides the basis of what I'm writing, right? Because it can't just be all, roses and perfume. It's just not like that in real life.
And a thing about backstories, as I was reading, I was waiting on you to throw in that he also rebelled in creating the Marriage and Divorce album, Marvin Gaye, that is, during that same time. And the development of himself as a man went from this soft core person to somebody who was, at their wits' end. Everything was just boiling out from the top. And this was his time to his authentic self that had been so much suppressed as a young man.
And for Barry to control the narrative, it was even funny when I read how Marvin married Barry's sister, and they eventually got a divorce or whatever. But the way they wanted to craft the narrative and how that was going to come out, he was just like as you said, he was fed up. And what was it? The myth or the rumor was Stevie Wonder was blind, but he could see how Barry Gordy was beating him all that money. Yes. Everybody had an issue with Barry when it was all said and done. So let's be clear. There were some things going on. There was some tea that people didn't want to come out. But I do think, regardless of how it came out or how they got it together in the studio, there was still this profound, emphatic music that we needed to hear in our community. And whether it was then or Kendrick Lamar now, it is necessary.
Now, this is in relation to being pro-Black, and I know that you know where I'm going with this. Throughout this story, Dr. Hill, there's a theme of Black pride carrying the stigma of negativity when we have intended on promoting positivity as a collective. James Brown, he was demonized, if you will, for yelling, I'm Black and I'm proud. Marvin Gaye was judged for asking the necessary question, what's going on, and exited Motown from Berry Gordy's control, while Kendrick Lamar was judged on BET performance, particularly by Geraldo Rivera for All Right performance. Almost every other organization and nationality, ethnicity, and almost every other cause can take pride in themselves. Why do we believe that we can do this why can't we do this without challenge, rather?
I think we do it in spite of where we come from, right? Because if you look at Kendrick Lamar, Muhammad Ali, The Temptations, Diana Ross, all the obstacles that they face, as a people, we are resilient. So regardless of what they think or what they perceive or how they where we should be in society, or where we should be or what they think we should accomplish, it doesn't matter. We're going to be heard. We're a voice. I was telling my students the other day, I said, in your lifetime, you've had a Black president not once but twice. You've had a sister who's been a first lady. Now, we have not seen her cut up on Barack or President Obama. I'm waiting for it to come because I know that day is coming. We have a vice president who's Asian and Black. That means that there's no limitation to what you can do. And you cannot sit up and make excuses. I can't do this and I'm limited by this, because your forefathers had nothing and they made dreams out of nothing. You are your ancestors' dreams. And so for Black people, it is always about, unfortunately, as my father has said, about proving ourselves, showing that we're better. And regardless of what other people think, other people are culture vultures. We come out with a dance, they take it over. We come out with a hairstyle, they take it over. Our words, our history, our flair, our fashion, our style, our food, it is always being duplicated, but never, it's never perfect, right? Appreciate it, right? As my kids say, a culture vulture. Because as a kid, I can remember when, and I'm going to date myself, but I can remember when Bo Derek ran down the beach with the cornrows. And it was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Sis, let's just stop. I'm sorry. The editor, Susan Taylor of Essence Magazine, wore cornrows. Stevie Wonder wore cornrows. And then when fast forward to Kim Kardashian wearing cornrows, she comes out with a new style. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We cannot do that. We have to take pride in ourselves. We have to own what we've done to this civilization. We have to own what we've contributed. And we cannot let anybody diminish our contributions, regardless of what they think. Because we're here to stay. You brought us over on a boat. We didn't ask to come. So that's that. Let's be about our business. I don't have time for that. And I just feel like we're always having to prove what we're worth and show our greatness some kind of way. And if it wasn't for us, there would be no Elvis Presley, right? If it wasn't for us, it wouldn't be the Lindy Hop. You can watch the Lindy Hop and see women twerking in the Lindy Hop, and it's 2023. That just shows you, I mean,
You're absolutely
keeping
right.
it 100.
Yeah,
you can look at the African tribes and they're twerking, and it's a Lindy Hop. And you see Black women twerking. There's nothing new that we can't do. Our hairstyles are unique. And one of my students made the comment. She said, I get tired of people copying us. I said, but what they don't recognize is how they brought us to the country. We had to make do. We weren't even allowed to wear turbans and stuff. We had to wear turbans on our hair just to cover up our hairstyles. So I think, like you said, it's this idea that we always have to fight for our place, no matter what we accomplish. We've had a Black president twice, and we're still fighting. Yes. We are our ancestors' dreams, and we can't make excuses. We can't get this done. They had nothing and got a whole lot of stuff done, And so for me, I think that's what we're always being diminished, but we will never be denied. That's where I see us as a people.
We will always shine. Yes, regardless. You mentioned several events, one I can recall as Bloody Thursday. It seems there are a lot of events that are untold in our classrooms and homes, and you can probably look at the story of Thanksgiving as one of those. Like me, do you feel like it is our duty to share with the youth the truth of Black history, good and bad?
I do. I teach English, but I teach the story of the exonerated five. I was a kid. I'm going to date myself again. I didn't quite understand all the nuances that were going to the story. I remember reading about Donald Trump, but I teach that to my students because it's like the same things are happening. It just happen in different formats. You guys have cell phones. That's the only difference. I remember seeing Rodney King on television, and ironically, I taught at Morehouse last semester. I had a gentleman who was 70-some years old. He was like, I was there at the scene. I worked at actual incident, and he told the class about it. So I feel like it is my responsibility to teach my students about different things, and it's amazing that they're unaware of what Black people have accomplished. For instance, one of my students made a comment about the KKK in the presentations, and I said that a Black woman took down the KKK because they lynched her son, and they all kind of looked at me like, huh? I said, go look it up. I'm not going to tell you anymore, because a Black woman actually bankrupted the KKK. Or this idea that Ava DuVernay reached out to Feinstein from when she did the piece on When They See Us, and for instance, like, I have nothing to say to you, but all of this, because she did her piece, it crushed anything First Thing was doing. So for me, it's like I'm always teaching a piece of history because I realize that they are not aware. And then when I teach humanities, I give them the true story of Christopher Columbus, and it's just amazing to see their comments because they're like, oh my God, I've been learning this in school. They never told me that. We shouldn't talk about Christopher Columbus. And so for me, it's like, you know, let me open your eyes to what really you should be knowing. Because I realized in school, when I was in school, the only thing I learned about history was the triangle trade, you know, the slaves, the sugar and the rum. Then we jumped to slavery. Then we jumped to Lincoln freeing us. And then somehow or another, we skipped all to Dr. King. And
yeah,
that
and
just
now we're learning and relearning that we may very well have not even been a part of that triangular trade, and we're actually indigenous to this land. I mean, it's so much that we can build on, and I like that we have the opportunity to be in this time, similar to what Chadwick Boseman spoke to in his acceptance speech for a PhD in human capital, that we're in this time right now for a particular reason, and it's our duty to know.
Right. We have a responsibility to teach the youth behind us, because if we don't, they're lost. And if it hadn't been for my father and my mother making me read about Egyptian history, I came home and my father was upset because I said Elizabeth Taylor was Cleopatra. In his own way. I was 5, and I think my dad probably cursed me out in his own way. But he laid out all the books. He was like, no, Elizabeth is a blue-eyed woman. And so now I find myself doing the same thing with my students, because they're not informed and are not aware of all the things we've done. And they know it's on social media, but they're not reading and understanding how all this is narrated for them, right? Because just in the instance of Black shows being on television, and we're talking about music and media, the same thing. There was nothing on TV that was Black except for The Cosby Show, Living Single, NYP, Undercover. All these different shows. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, now society is reflecting what we're really going through, and I need you guys to be aware how we're being portrayed in the media, and even in our songs, what's happening in the song. So it's a different concept for them.
New York Undercover was truly underrated, and it needs to come back for everybody to see.
Right, and them boys were fine. Let me just say, for all the sisters, them brothers were fine. Okay, they were fine. I watch them now. I tape them now on the DVR, and I see Torres and Malik, yes, on a regular basis. Yes, I do. So I'm going to put it right there.
You know, why did I get married for Malik? You know, he stays.
Yes. Him and Janet, like, yes, honey, New York Undercover, honey. And then you get a chance to see all the artists, like when they were just kind of starting out with Brandy and Mary J. Blige and Levert, and it's just great to even watch. It's still good TV. So I watch them sometimes, and my daughter's like, Mommy, who's that? And it's funny because she wasn't born, you know, anywhere with Tupac, but she knows who Tupac is because she watched Different World. And she knows who Data is from watching that. So it's this whole connection of, hey, I know who this person is. And she's like, wow, Tupac was profound, right? So, yeah, I keep them on the DVR. I watch them on a regular. And Tommy, who didn't have a job. So,
well, I have just one more question for you to round things out. So Eurocentric practices affect how we treat each other, from colorism to Black on Black crime, dysfunction, family tension, devaluation of ourselves and each other, etc. Do you think music is a better change agent than any other, like activism, protests, and things of that nature?
I don't think it needs to be solely music, but I think music is universal. I do think the protests are necessary. I think media is necessary, journals, literary articles, whatever it is, all of it's necessary, because everybody doesn't relate to a particular song, right? Even if it's universal, like a Michael Jackson could sing, you know, We Are the World or whatnot, but there still needs to be scholarly support for what's out there. Like when the Cosby Show came on, I can't think of the psychologist's name at this time, but they literally brought in psychologists and said, okay, these things were happening in a Black family, these things would not, this is how it's going to be perceived. And I think that those studies still help to contribute to what our story is and how it should be told. I made the comment to my students how I watched Roots as a kid, and then the new Roots came out, and the new Kunta Kinte had perfect teeth, T.I. had perfect teeth, and I was like, yo, this ain't right. And they started laughing. I was like, because slaves didn't have perfect white teeth, they didn't get this right. And I'm sorry, it's not Larry, but Lawrence Fishburne, was Alex Haley. And then I'm like, he don't look nothing like Alex. So
Not Larry.
Exactly. And I love them to death, but like you did not pay it. T.I.'s teeth are perfectly white. Slaves didn't have dental care, right? So, and so I think these things are important when we tell our stories.
We had coconut oil.
We had coconut oil. Okay, some coconut oil. I'll give you that. But Brother Man went to somebody's dentist, like Cardi B. He got a bag and fixed his teeth. Stop playing. But I do think that these things are important because it tells the world how we are, right? It tells them how we exist and how we function. And so I admire how many Black people in Hollywood are now telling our stories, who are taking over studios and saying, hey, this is the Black experience. And I think it is necessary in all the realms, not just one. But music we can all listen to. And I tell my students, it's funny because when I was a kid, there was a song called Self-Destruction from the New York Coast rappers, and it talked about today's topic is self-destruction. It's really at the end of the rap that's bugging, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? I said, if you really listen to the words, they're talking about Black on Black crime. They have women talking about losing their sons. They talk about, Heavy D, deep in the heart of the matter, self-destruction served on the platter. It's the same thing that you guys are doing today, but in my generation, it was a little bit more clean, but we keep repeating the same behavior, right? And so I think that there is a connection to music, but I think all the other realms we need to invest in as well, because there's more than one way to tell our story.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Dr. Hill. I want to thank you so much for, just sharing some laughs with me, and also some great information and insight and perspective as to how you developed this profound piece. And thank you for closing out the people and contributing your message here. We want to thank you all so much for being a part of this initiative with us, and being a part of the pre-interview for the virtual reading over From a Black Perspective, The People. Y'all have a great night.
Have a good night.